My parents cut me off for 4 years, like I had died somewhere inconvenient and they didn't want to deal with the body. No calls, no holidays, no checking in. Just silence so complete it felt engineered. Deliberate. The kind of silence that tells you someone wants the world to believe you no longer exist. It happened because I refused to do what my father demanded back then. I didn't argue after that. I stopped expecting anything. I took the hit, kept it where men usually keep those things, somewhere behind the ribs, and built anyway. I leased a narrow corner unit on Mercer Avenue with cracked tile, bad lighting, and pipes that knocked in the walls when the heat came on. I bought equipment piece by piece, one dented grinder, one second-hand refrigerator, one warped cafe table at a time. I painted the place myself after midnight with the radio low and the front door locked. I learned how to fix an espresso machine from service manuals and stubbornness. I burned through bad beans, bad weeks, and months where I counted every dollar twice before I slept. The place came together slowly. Warm pendant lights, clean wood counters, music soft enough to stay out of people's way. Regulars who knew my order before I said it and nodded at me like I belonged to the block. Every morning I rewrote the chalkboard menu by hand, same careful block letters, same quiet promise to myself that no one was taking this from me. Not again. By the start of this winter, the shop was steady, not flashy, real, built with work I could point to, built without them. That Tuesday morning, everything still looked the way I wanted it to. Steam rising off fresh espresso, sun cutting across the front window, a calm room full of small routines, the kind of peace you only understand after you've lived without it. Then the bell above the door rang, and the air changed. It was 7:45 on a Tuesday when the bell over the glass door gave its soft metal chime, and the whole room shifted before I even looked up. Not because of the cold outside, because of my mother's laugh. I knew that sound the way you know an old scar when the weather turns. Bright on purpose. Too light. The kind of laugh that always meant damage was walking in dressed like charm. I turned from the espresso machine and saw them coming straight through the door like they had every right to be there. My father first. Tall frame, dark wool coat, shoulders squared like he was entering a boardroom he owned. Same flat stare he used to bring to the dinner table when he wanted everybody else smaller without raising his voice. My mother beside him, smiling wide, eyes moving quick over the room, counting people, measuring attention. Behind them came my younger sister, Sienna, holding her phone at chest level. Camera already running like this was something she planned to post before noon. They didn't stop at the line, didn't glance at the menu, didn't wait for me to speak. They walked past 2 customers and came straight toward the counter. Moving through my shop like predators crossing a fence line they didn't believe applied to them. My father looked around with fake approval, slow and theatrical, giving the room time to watch him. "What a nice little place," he said, loud enough for the laptop crowd by the front window to hear. "We're proud of him." Proud. The word landed rotten. My hand stayed steady on the milk pitcher anyway. I didn't give him the reaction he came to collect. One of my regulars, Nathan, looked over from the pickup end, confused. He knew me. He didn't know this. My mother smiled at a woman waiting on a cappuccino and said, "Isn't this something our son always was ambitious?" Our son. 4 years of treating me like I was dead, and now she was wearing my name in public like it was jewelry. Sienna kept filming, angling the phone to catch my face, the counter, the room, every possible witness. My father leaned one forearm onto the wood like he belonged behind it, like he had built any part of what he was touching. I set the pitcher down, wiped my hands on a bar towel, and stepped forward. "Can I help you?" I asked. My father's smile vanished the second I didn't bend. My father's face tightened the way it used to when a room stopped obeying him. He didn't waste time pretending this was a visit anymore. He opened the leather portfolio tucked under his arm, pulled out a stapled packet, and slapped it onto my counter hard enough to rattle the tip jar and shift the pens beside the register. "Sign it," he said. His voice was low, but his posture stayed loud. He wanted the room to feel him, even if it couldn't hear every word. I didn't touch the packet. I looked down at the first page instead. Clean header, formal language, my business name printed in bold across the top, as if somebody had already granted him authority just by typing it neatly. Blackwood Coffee LLC. My name underneath, positioned where a signature should go. Like consent was already part of the design. Sienna tilted her phone down to catch the document, then back up toward my face. My mother stood beside my father with that small, satisfied smile she always wore when cruelty was being handled professionally. 15%, my father said. I kept my voice flat. Of what? Of this. He tapped the packet with one finger. The shop, the business, the brand. You want to play independent, that's your choice, but you still pay the family tax. I looked at him for a second, then at the pages again. Partnership agreement, transfer language, equity allocation. It wasn't a bluff scribbled on scrap paper. Somebody had tried to make it look legitimate. Why would I sign over 15% of my business to you? I asked. His eyes stayed cold. Because I can make one call and have you bleeding by the end of the week. There it was. Not reconciliation, not apology, not even nostalgia twisted into leverage. Straight to extraction. My mother leaned closer to the counter and said softly, "You're renting, Caleb. Don't confuse possession with ownership." I let that sit. A couple near the front window had stopped pretending not to listen. Nathan looked from me to my father and back again. Sienna kept filming, steady now, like she thought this was the beginning of my collapse. My father pushed the packet an inch closer. "You sign," he said, "or I call your landlord tonight. I tell him you're violating the lease. Unsafe electrical work, unauthorized subletting, permit issues, anything I need. Men like that protect their buildings, not their tenants." He said it calmly. That was the part that mattered. Not anger, not impulse. Strategy. I slid the packet back toward him with the edge of a napkin, like it was contaminated. "No," I said. His jaw flexed once. "Then I'll make the call." I held his stare. "Do it," I said. My father paused for half a beat, just enough to show he hadn't expected agreement. Men like him know how to work with fear. They never prepare for calm. My mother blinked once. Sienna's filming hand stuttered, then steadied again. My father recovered fast, pulling his phone from his coat pocket with slow, deliberate confidence, like he was about to teach the room how power worked. "Fine," he said. "You're about to learn something." He started scrolling for the number. I leaned forward slightly over the counter and kept my voice even. "Put it on speaker." His thumb stopped. "So everybody can hear what you're threatening to do in my shop." That landed. Not because I raised my voice, because I didn't. The customers were watching now. My barista had gone quiet behind the espresso machine. The woman at the window table wasn't pretending not to listen anymore. Nathan had turned fully in his seat. My father could feel the audience. And once a man like that knows he's being watched. Pride starts making decisions before judgment can catch up. He looked at me, measuring. "You sure?" he asked. I nodded once. "Very." He wanted the call to scare me in private while the room absorbed the performance. What I gave him instead was a stage with evidence, a place where every word had witnesses. My mother saw it before he did. I caught the shift in her face, the brief tightening around the mouth. But she said nothing. She never stopped him when she thought he might still win. Sienna adjusted her angle to keep both of us in frame. She was still treating it like content. Like reality only counted if she could hold it inside a screen. My father pressed the number and lifted the phone. Then, because refusing would make him look smaller. He tapped speaker. The ringtone echoed across the cafe, thin and metallic in the sudden quiet. 1 ring, 2, 3. My father stood taller with each one, like control was already coming back to him. I stayed where I was, palms resting lightly on the counter, breathing slow. This was the difference between who I had been and who I was now. 4 years ago I would have argued, tried to explain, asked him not to do it. That version of me still believed there was something to save. The man standing behind the counter that morning understood something simpler. When somebody comes to rob you in public, you don't beg him to stop, you let him show his face. Then the line picked up. A rough voice came through the speaker, alert from the first syllable. "Yeah, this is Vincent." My father smiled, like the room had just been handed back to him. "Vincent," he said warmly, loud enough for half the shop to hear. "This is Robert Hale. We need to discuss your tenant." I didn't move right away. I let him hear himself say it. Let the customers hear the shape of it. Not concern, not a question, possession, control. He was already speaking as if the damage had been approved. There was a short pause on the line. My tenant, Vincent said. Which one? My father straightened, confidence coming back into his shoulders. The coffee shop, Blackwood Coffee. I'm his father, and I need to make you aware of several serious lease violations before this gets worse. That was when I leaned in. Vincent, I said calmly, close enough to the phone for my voice to carry clean. It's Caleb. My father's head turned toward me so fast it almost looked involuntary. My mother's smile froze. Sienna's phone dipped for a fraction of a second before she corrected it. On the speaker. Vincent's tone changed immediately. Caleb, you all right? That one sentence did more damage to my father than any argument I could have made. There was recognition in it. Familiarity. Not landlord to disposable tenant, man to man, professional to professional, something established, something real. My father tried to bulldoze over it. Vincent, listen, he cut in. Sharper now. I'm calling as his father. There are issues with that unit that... Who is this again? Vincent asked. The question came flat, not confused, dismissive. My father blinked once. Robert Hale, his father. A beat of silence. Then Vincent said, I don't deal with fathers. I deal with my tenant, Caleb. Are you safe? My mother lost the smile first, not all at once, just enough for the room to see the crack. Sienna lowered the phone an inch, then raised it again. My father gripped his phone tighter, knuckles whitening around the edges. I'm fine, I said. They came in asking me to sign over part of my business. When I said no, he threatened to call you and force a lease problem. I wanted you to hear it directly. Vincent exhaled once, slow and irritated. Then his voice hardened. His voice. All right, Robert. If you're still on speaker, hear me clearly. You do not get to threaten my tenant, and you do not get to contact me about his lease unless you're his attorney, and I have written authorization in front of me. My father bristled. I own commercial property myself. I know exactly how lease compliance works. No, Vincent said, calm as concrete. You know how intimidation works. This lease is clean. The business writer is approved, electrical inspection passed, permits are on file. I signed off on every line personally. I watched the change happen in my father's face, not defeat yet, something meaner. The first realization that the lever he came to use wasn't attached to anything. Vincent kept going. And one more thing. If you call me again to harass him, I'll treat it as interference with contract and pass it to council. I don't make room for people who try to bully tenants in my buildings. My father opened his mouth, but there was nothing useful left in it. The call had stopped being a threat. Now it was a record. My father stared at the phone for a moment after Vincent finished, like the device itself had turned on him. The cafe had gone so quiet I could hear the soft hiss from the steam wand and the faint scrape of a spoon against ceramic somewhere near the front window. He ended the call without saying goodbye, and looked up at me with something colder than anger. Cute, he said. You think you're protected because your landlord likes you. My mother found her voice again, thin and venomous. You always find somebody to hide behind. I didn't answer that. Men like my father and mother mistake documentation for weakness when it isn't theirs. They hear contracts and think dependence. They hear preparation and think fear. What stood behind me wasn't a person to hide in. It was a lease file, an inspection record, a chain of signatures, a clean trail, real things. Things that stayed standing after voices ran out. My father tapped the packet on the counter again, louder this time, trying to rebuild the performance. Sign it, he said, or we do this another way. I kept my tone level. What way? He leaned in. His eyes were bright now, not with confidence, but with spite. Your shop runs through an LLC, he said. I know enough to make your life expensive. I can trigger reviews. I can push compliance complaints. I can make suppliers nervous. I can make processors freeze accounts. I can make a business like this bleed before you understand what's happening. The threat changed shape, right there in front of me. It wasn't about the landlord anymore. That lever had snapped in his hand. Now he was reaching for paperwork, filings, administrative pressure, every back-office weapon people like him use when brute force stops working. My mother stood beside him like she had heard all this before. Sienna kept filming. But her confidence wasn't as smooth now. The phone moved too often. She was searching for an angle that made them look in control. I reached under the counter, unlocked the narrow drawer beside the register, and pulled out the black binder I kept there. No theater. No dramatic pause. Just the file I actually used. Lease copy. Vendor agreements, permit approvals, insurance certificates, property records. The things you keep when you built your life expecting somebody to challenge your right to keep it. I opened it on the counter and turned a few tabs until I found the section I wanted. Then I slid one page halfway out and laid it flat between us. My father frowned. "What is that?" "My ownership statement," I said. He gave a short, disgusted laugh. "Your lease isn't ownership." "It isn't my lease." That stopped him. My mother looked down. Sienna's phone dipped. I took the next page from the binder and placed it beside the first. Authorization letter. Entity summary, clean print, county seal, legal names exactly where they needed to be. Then I flipped one more page and turned it so he could read the deed abstract without having to touch it. My father stared. For the first time since he walked in. He went completely still. The name on the holding company wasn't Vincent's alone. It wasn't some outside landlord he could threaten from a distance. It was the property LLC Vincent and I had formed 18 months earlier, after the previous owner tried to sell the building out from under the tenants. My name sat there in black print as managing member. He looked up at me slowly. "You bought the building." "I secured the building," I said, "and my shop with it." My mother's face lost color in a small, controlled wave. "With what money?" "Time," I said. "And 4 years of not wasting it on people who wanted me smaller." My father looked back down at the papers like they might rearrange themselves into something he understood better. But the names didn't move. The structure didn't change. The trap he'd tried to spring on me had closed around empty air because he had never bothered to imagine I might have gone farther than survival. He had come in thinking I was still a tenant. He was standing in a building I partially owned. My father absorbed that hit the way men like him always do, not by backing down. By reaching for a different weapon before the room could register he had lost ground. I watched it happen in his face. The pause. The recalculation. The shift from landlord pressure to administrative damage. "Fine," he said, louder now, as if volume could restore rank. "You think owning part of the building makes you untouchable? It doesn't. You still have a business license. You still have taxes. You still have vendors, processors, regulators. Businesses die from paperwork every day." My mother stepped in beside him, posture smoothing back into confidence now that he had found a new lane. "You don't understand how fragile this all is," she said quietly. "A few calls, a few questions, a few concerns in the right inboxes. That's all it takes." Sienna's phone stayed up, but she wasn't filming casually anymore. She was too focused on my father's hands. On the papers, on me. Watching and waiting for direction, I kept my voice even. "Then do it." That checked him for a second. "Do what?" he asked. "Call whoever you want," I said. "Health department, fire marshal, processor, supplier. Put it on speaker like you did with Vincent." He didn't like that. I could see it. He wanted pressure without witnesses. Damage without fingerprints. He wanted fear to make me collapse before he had to commit to anything traceable. So he changed tactics again. He opened the portfolio and pulled out a second packet. Thinner than the first, more official looking, stapled clean at the corner. He laid it on the counter with deliberate care, like a man placing a blade where everybody could see the shine. "This isn't a threat," he said. "It's already in motion." I didn't touch it. I looked down and read the title from where I stood. "Demand for Membership Interest Transfer Blackwood Coffee LLC." My chest tightened once, then settled. "You can't file ownership into existence," I said. My father smiled without warmth. "No, but I can file enough confusion to make your life very expensive." My mother's expression sharpened. "We didn't forget about you," she said softly. "We were paying attention." That landed cleaner than the rest because it explained too much at once. The timing, the documents, the language. They hadn't wandered in on instinct. They had been watching from a distance, waiting until the business was stable enough to be worth taking. I looked from the packet to my father. "What agency did you file with?" His smile widened just a little. "Secretary of State, change of control, registered authority. You think you're the only one who knows how an LLC works?" That mattered. Not because it scared me, because filings leave trails. Names, timestamps, network sources, authentication requests. Administrative systems are useful that way. People think they can hide inside them until the system decides to log what they touched. I reached below the counter, opened the locked shelf near the POS terminal, and pulled out my phone charger. Wrapped around it was the other thing I kept there: access to my compliance alerts. I plugged my phone in, opened the registered agent portal, and tapped into entity notifications. Nothing new at first. I looked up. "When did you file it?" "This morning," he said, "before we came." I nodded once and refreshed the screen. This time a red alert populated at the top. "Urgent filing attempt detected. Change of registered agent control request." The air in my chest went cold in a controlled way. Not panic, recognition. I tapped the alert and the details opened in a clean list. Timestamp, reference number, submission status. Then the line that mattered most. Submission source network, Blackwood Coffee guest Wi-Fi. My eyes lifted from the phone to my father, then moved to Sienna. Her thumb was working over the screen. She wasn't filming anymore. She was filing. For 1 second, nobody moved. Then my mother turned toward Sienna so fast the smile disappeared completely. "What did you do?" Sienna froze with the phone halfway lowered, thumb still hovering over the screen. I cut across her without raising my voice. "You were submitting it." My father snapped before she could answer. "That doesn't prove anything." I looked back down at my phone and read the next lines exactly as they appeared. Submitted name, Robert Hale. Submitted email, Robert Hale. Two-factor verification sent to owner of record. Status pending. Fraud review triggered. Clean, time-stamped, preserved. I turned the screen slightly so he could see his own name sitting there in black text, like a confession he had typed himself. "You filed it under your name," I said. "From my guest network." My father's face changed in real time. Not guilt. Rage first. Then the brief flash of something more useful. Fear. My mother went pale in a quiet wave she couldn't hide. Sienna lowered the phone all the way now, and whatever performance she thought she was capturing was gone. She wasn't documenting my collapse. She was standing inside evidence. "Delete it," my father said. I didn't move. "I can't." His jaw flexed. "Delete the alert." "It's a registered agent notification," I said. "It already generated a reference number." He leaned across the counter like he might grab the phone out of my hand. I stayed where I was and lifted my eyes past him toward the black dome camera mounted near the ceiling corner. That was enough. He stopped short. Not because he had found restraint, because he had finally remembered the room wasn't his. Cameras over the register, cameras by the entrance, cameras across the seating area. Timestamps on all of it. People like my father only think about surveillance when they're the ones controlling it. They forget ordinary businesses keep records too. Behind me, my barista, Elise, looked over from the espresso machine. I gave her one small nod. Nothing dramatic. Nothing anybody but her would notice unless they were trained to watch for signals. She reached beneath the lower shelf and pressed the silent security button we installed after a break-in attempt last winter. No siren. No scene. Just an automatic dispatch, a timestamp, and a report that would start building before my father knew it existed. My mother tried a different voice then. Sweetness dragged over panic. "Caleb," she said, "why are you doing this? We're your family." I held her gaze. "You walked in here to extort me. Now you're committing filing fraud on my Wi-Fi." My father straightened, trying to rebuild himself with volume. "You think some paperwork alert scares me I can still ruin you?" "You're already trying," I said, "and you're doing it on camera." For the first time, his eyes flicked up toward the ceiling. He saw the lens, saw the angle, saw the counter beneath it. Then the bell over the front door rang again. This time it wasn't a customer. A man in a charcoal suit stepped inside carrying a clipboard tucked against his side, moving with the clean, direct pace of somebody who didn't need to browse or ask where the restroom was. Mid-40s, no coffee in hand, no hesitation at the threshold. His eyes crossed the room once counter. Door, cameras, witnesses, and stopped on my father like he had already seen the name before he arrived. He came straight to the register. "Robert Hale," he asked. My father turned toward him, irritated and cautious at once. "Who are you?" The man flipped open a badge-style ID attached to a lanyard. "Evan Mercer," he said. "Business filings compliance. I'm here regarding an urgent attempted change of control submission connected to Blackwood Coffee LLC." The room went still again. He looked past my father and met my eyes. "Are you Caleb Hale?" Yes? He nodded once. We received an automated fraud trigger from your registered agent portal. An individual attempted to submit a control change filing from this location's guest network. I need to confirm whether that filing was authorized by the owner of record. My father stepped in. This is private. You need to leave. Evan didn't move, didn't raise his voice, didn't even look impressed. He turned the clipboard slightly toward me and pointed to the printed line. Reference number, submission timestamp, network source, submitted name. The same details my phone showed, only now formal, preserved, and already outside my control. The trap wasn't theoretical anymore. It had a file number. My father looked at the clipboard the way a man looks at a fire he thought was still a spark. Not disbelief. Recognition. He knew exactly what he had done. What shook him was seeing it arrive in a suit with a badge and a printed record before he had time to talk his way around it. My mother moved first. "This is a misunderstanding," she said. Voice suddenly soft, polished, controlled. "We're family." Evan Mercer didn't even blink. "Family is not filing authority," he said. Then he looked at me again. "Mr. Hale, do you authorize any change of control, registered agent update, or transfer of ownership interest related to Blackwood Coffee LLC?" I kept my voice flat. "No." He marked something on the clipboard. "For the record, you are confirming this filing attempt was unauthorized." "Correct." My father stepped closer to the counter, anger pushing back into him now that denial had failed. "You're not recording anything," he said. "This is a private business matter." Evan finally turned to him. "Sir, your name appears as the submitting party on a flagged filing attempt. At this point, it is a compliance matter." The word landed hard. Compliance. Not family disagreement, not misunderstanding, not hurt feelings, a category, a system, a record that would exist whether my father approved of it or not. He tried one more angle. "I'm his father." Evan nodded once, like he had heard that line too many times to respect it. "Then you should understand better than most that you do not control an adult business owner's entity filings." My father opened his mouth again, but the bell over the front door rang before he could use it. 2 uniformed officers stepped inside. Not rushing, not dramatic, just deliberate. A female officer first, hand near her radio, scanning the room with trained eyes. A male officer just behind her, gaze moving from the counter to my father, to Sienna, to the open binder in front of me. The cafe changed shape the second they crossed the threshold. What had been a family ambush became an active scene. The female officer stopped at the counter and looked directly at me. "Sir, we received a silent alarm from this location. Are you the owner?" "Yes." "Are you safe?" "I'm safe," I said. "They came in threatening extortion and attempted a fraudulent control filing from my guest Wi-Fi." The officer's eyes shifted to my father. "Sir, step back from the counter." He didn't move. "This is a family conversation." The male officer answered before I could. "No, it's not. Step back." My father hesitated just long enough to show the calculation. Badge, witnesses, cameras, consequences. Then he took one step back. The female officer turned to Evan. "You are?" "Evan Mercer. Business filings compliance. I responded to an automated fraud trigger tied to this business." She nodded once, then looked back at me. "Do you want them trespassed from the property?" That was the moment everything narrowed clean. I didn't look at my mother. I didn't look at Sienna. I looked at my father. "Yes," I said. "And I want it documented that he demanded 15% of my business and threatened to interfere with my lease and filings when I refused." The male officer pulled out a notepad. "Repeat the threat." I did, calm, exact, no extra emotion, just words. 15%, family tax, call your landlord, make your business bleed, change of control filing, guest Wi-Fi. I gave him a usable timeline instead of a speech. That's how men like my father get trapped. Not by outrage, by specifics. The female officer asked. "You have cameras covering this area?" "Yes, register, front entrance, seating area." Evan lifted his clipboard slightly. "Portal logs reflect timestamp, network source, and submitted name." My father tried to interrupt. "None of that proves—" "Identification," the male officer said. My father stared at him. "Excuse me. ID, now." My mother's face hardened. "This is outrageous. The female officer didn't even look at her. "Ma'am, remain where you are." My father reached into his coat and produced his wallet with the kind of angry precision that meant he wanted everybody to notice how insulted he was. The officer checked the ID, glanced down, then back up. "Robert Hale. All right?" Sienna's breathing had changed, small and shallow now. She was still holding the phone, but no longer like a weapon, more like she didn't know what else to do with her hands. The female officer turned toward her. "You too. Name and identification." My mother snapped. "She doesn't need to." "She was using a device at the counter during a flagged filing attempt," Evan said. "She absolutely does." Sienna swallowed, then handed over her ID with a shaking hand. The male officer checked it, frowned slightly, then looked at his partner. There was a pause. Small, quiet. But I saw it. He leaned toward her and said something under his breath. She listened, eyes narrowing, then looked at me. "Mr. Hale," she said, "there appears to be an earlier complaint connected to your father's name. Different business. Similar filing interference." My stomach tightened once, low and hard, but my face stayed still. "What kind of business?" "A retail boutique across town," Evan said before she could. Attempted coercion followed by an unauthorized ownership-related filing. Same general pattern. There it was. Not a bad morning. Not a loss of temper. A method. My father heard it too. His posture changed again, the way it does when a bully realizes the room has stopped being about a single victim and started noticing a habit. The female officer turned back to him. "Mr. Hale, you are now formally trespassed from this business and this property. If you return, you will be arrested." His face went dark. "This is my son." "I don't care," she said. "Leave." He leaned toward me one last time, voice low, trying to force privacy back into a room that no longer had any for him. "This isn't over." The male officer stepped forward immediately. "It is for today." My father looked around the cafe for an ally and found none. Just customers, witnesses, cameras, a compliance officer with a file number, 2 police officers writing things down, a son he no longer recognized because fear wasn't available anymore. He turned toward the door. My mother followed. Lips pressed into a white line. Sienna backed away after them. Phone lowered, eyes wet now. No story left to edit. At the threshold. The female officer stopped them long enough to finish the warning and note the time. Then they were outside. And for the first time since they walked in, the building felt like mine again. 2 days later, my registered agent forwarded the full incident packet, filing reference number, submission source, timestamps, fraud flag, attempted change of control request blocked before acceptance. My attorney sent preservation letters the same afternoon to the Secretary of State's office, the compliance unit, and the portal administrator, locking the logs, authentication attempts, and a network trail in place before anybody could claim confusion. The police report from my shop didn't get written off as family drama. Not once the earlier boutique complaint surfaced. Same coercion language, same demand for ownership, same administrative pressure after refusal, same habit of using public Wi-Fi, like distance could wash fingerprints off intent. Once investigators saw the pattern, they opened it the way it should have been opened from the start, repeated attempted fraud. Not a domestic misunderstanding. Within a week, my father was served with a restraining order covering my business. The building, and my residence. The wording mattered more than he wanted it to. Interference with business operations, attempted administrative control, extortion-related conduct. Men like him can live with distance. They hate precise language. Precise language pins them to what they are. My mother tried the old route after that. Calls to relatives, messages about forgiveness, long speeches about family unity, respect, and how success had changed me. It didn't work the way it used to. Not after there was body cam footage, not after there were portal logs, not after half a room full of customers watched them walk in smiling like they owned my counters and leave under trespass warning. Sienna deleted the clips from her phone that same night, but it didn't matter. Reality was already preserved somewhere she couldn't edit. Camera feeds, officer notes, network records, her statement. She wasn't charged, but she was documented, and that was enough to keep her from turning my life into content again. My father made one more move a week later through an email dressed up as a consulting offer. Strategic partnership language, neutral tone, fake distance. My attorney traced the domain registration back to him before lunch and added it to the file. The investigating officer called him directly. After that, the silence started. The shop didn't fall apart. It got stronger. Customers came back. Some tipped heavier than usual. Some didn't mention it at all, which I appreciated more. One woman left a folded note beside the register that said, "Staying calm is what power looks like." I didn't frame it. I put it in the same drawer as my permits, lease records, and filing alerts. Proof belongs with proof. By the end of the month, morning traffic was up. Weekend sales were better. Nathan started bringing people from his office. Elise worked the bar like nothing in that room had ever been stronger than routine. The chalkboard menu still got rewritten every morning in my own hand. The lights still came on before sunrise. The espresso machine still hissed like it always had. My life didn't become untouched. It became defended. Then my parents did what they always do when force stops working. They disappeared again. But this time it felt different. 4 years ago. Silence was abandonment, a sentence they handed me and expected me to serve. This time, silence was control. Mine. Chosen. Locked. Documented. They were gone. But I wasn't waiting at the window anymore. I had a business, a building, a paper trail, and a front door that closed on my side. That was the part they never understood. They thought power was volume, threats, blood, entitlement. They thought if they said family loudly enough, the rest of the world would ignore the theft happening inside the word. They were wrong. Power is staying still when the person across from you wants a reaction. Power is records. Power is witnesses. Power is knowing exactly what belongs to you and refusing to surrender it just because the hand reaching for it shares your last name. So that's my story. What would you do if the family that cut you off for years suddenly walked into your business and demanded a percentage of everything you built? Would you give in to keep the peace? Or would you hold your ground and let the truth leave its own paper trail? Let me know in the comments. And if this story stayed with you, like the video and subscribe. I appreciate you being here. Disclaimer. This story is written for entertainment and inspired story purposes only. Names, events, and details may be changed or fictionalized.